Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Kyle Ashcraft of Maxwell CPA Review, and I scored a 95 on the FAR exam. And I'm here to tell you how I did it. So in this video, we're going to talk about the exam structure of FAR. We'll talk about my study approach for it. Then we'll talk about the major topics you need to understand to pass it. And we'll finish by talking about a really useful tip for studying for FAR. So with that, let's jump in. So what makes the FAR exam different from the other exams? First, it covers a lot of content. It covers the most content out of any of the exams. Second, it covers a wide range of topics. So you're having to learn about everything from governmental accounting to bank reconciliations to how to account for business consolidations. So there's a lot of numbers that you have to keep track of. With that comes my first tip, which is to use Excel for the exam. You may be surprised to find out that you can actually use Microsoft Excel during the exam. They offer a limited version right within the test software. So for me, Excel became my best friend while I was studying and taking the FAR exam. So now let's talk about my study approach for FAR. I studied for FAR over the course of 8 weeks while working a full-time job. So I would study for 2 hours each weeknight and then 5 hours each day on the weekend. So 20 hours a week times 8 weeks, about 160 hours of studying, which is what most sites recommend for the FAR exam. The order in which I took the exams was I started with FAR, and then I went to BEC, then Reg, and then finished with Audit. So with that, let's jump into the major topics that you need to understand in order to pass the FAR exam. The first one is Governmental Accounting, which is really different from other forms of accounting because it uses what's called fund accounting. There are 5 different funds that you need to memorize. The first one is the Special Revenue Fund. So whenever the government wants to use revenue for a specific purpose, then it goes into that fund. The next one is the Capital Projects Fund, which is for big construction projects. So if a city's building a big convention center, then the revenue would go into that fund. The next one is the Debt Service Fund, where the government is paying interest and principal on its debt. The fourth is the Permanent Fund, to where the government can't touch the principal in that fund, but it earns interest through it. And then the last one is the General Fund, which is a catch-all account, because if something doesn't go into the previous 4 accounts, then it goes into the General Fund. So the General Fund basically covers the daily operations of the government. Next is on debt and equity securities. So when a business owns bonds or stocks. There are 3 kinds, and they matter because they determine how we're going to record the unrealized gains and losses. And an unrealized gain or loss means that you haven't sold it yet, but it's changed in value. A realized gain or loss is when you've actually sold a security. So the first kind is for trading securities. We only expect to hold them for the short term because we want to sell them and try to make a profit. So when we record the unrealized gain or loss, we're going to record it on the income statement. On the opposite side of the spectrum is the held to maturity security. This is for bonds, to where we're going to wait all the way until the bond matures. We're not going to sell it in the meantime. So we don't have to record unrealized gains or losses since we're going to hold it all the way until maturity. And then in between the two is available for sale securities. So we're not going to hold them for the short term like trading securities, but we're also not going to wait all the way until maturity. So here, when we record the unrealized gains or losses, we're going to record it on the statement of other comprehensive income. Before we continue with the video, I just wanted to let you know that I also offer online private tutoring for the CPA exams. So if you're interested in taking the next step towards passing them, you can go to maxwellcpareview.com. And with that, let's get back to the video. The next topic is on accounting for equity transactions. So when you own part of another company, the way we account for it is all determined by the percentage that you own of that company. So first, if you own less than 20%, you're going to use what's unofficially called the adjusted cost method. So here you don't have significant influence over that company. You're not going to recognize investment income until you actually receive a dividend from that company. So if they go 10 years and they're growing, but they don't issue any dividends, you're not going to record any income. If you own between 20 and 50% of a company, then you use the equity method. Here, you are going to record investment income regardless of the dividends. So let's say that you own 30% of a company and they have net income of $100,000. So you're going to record income of 30% of that $100,000. You're going to record $30,000 of investment income. And then if you own more than 50% of a company, then you have a majority stake in it. So you're going to actually just consolidate it into your own financial statements. The next topic is on accounting for foreign currencies. We need to have three terms really clear in our heads for this because it can get kind of confusing. The first one is the recording currency, which is the currency that the company's books are in. The next one is the functional currency, which is the main currency that the company has its operations in. And the last one is the reporting currency, which is the financial statement currency. So let's say that we have a company in the US right south of the Canadian border. So it keeps its books in the US dollar, that is its recording currency, but it primarily does business with the Canadian dollar. So what happens is it needs to remeasure from the Canadian dollar to the US dollar to record its books. But then, to complicate things farther, let's say that it's owned by a Spanish company which operates in the euro. So at the end of the year, when they're putting together the financial statements, they need to translate from the US dollars that the books are in into the euro to get to the financial statements. All right, now that we've gone through all the major topics, let's talk about a really helpful tip for studying for FAR. And that is, you need to download real-world financial statements. There's three kinds you need to download: for a for-profit company, for a nonprofit, and for a governmental entity. So think about your favorite big publicly traded company, and then Google the name plus 10K report. For a governmental entity, think about your county or state, type in the name, and then annual financial report. And then for a nonprofit, not all of them are publicly available, but the bigger ones are. So just type in that name plus annual financial report. And I think it's going to be really helpful because the FAR exam can be really complicated in terms of all the theory. So it helps you to see how this is actually used in the real world. So the FAR exam can be really challenging, but if you start learning about these major topics, you'll be a step closer towards passing it. If you have any questions, then please reach out. And then if you're interested in the online private CPA tutoring that I do, then you can go to maxwellcpareview.com.